Much everyone for joining us. We're here with Harry, who is the founder of Candido Films, and we're really excited to talk to him and find out a bit more about the brand. I know a few of you have shot Candido, a few of you might not have shot it yet. So yeah, we're hoping this will be a really exciting chat with Harry. So over to you, Harry.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Karen. Thanks for organising this today, and thank you for everyone for joining. Thank you guys for coming today and hearing about the brand that I've started a couple of years ago. And I think today will be a great way to unveil a few things and peel away some of the layers that some film businesses have. I think a lot of people shoot film. They don't know a lot about the brands that are up and coming. They don't know a lot about brands and film businesses themselves and how it starts even from start to finish, as well as how a brand even starts, like myself, and how you kind of get into something like this. So hopefully I give you a bit of an overview of not only myself, but the brand, what's coming up, how we work with the community, how we've sort of solved some problems, some steps along the way. And yeah, I want to reveal a few secrets, and not necessarily secrets, but brands don't want to talk about a few things. And a lot of these big businesses, they're either curbed by NDAs, they don't want to talk about certain things, and they want to keep it really secret. But hopefully today I can share a few things that you may not necessarily know. So a little bit about me. As you can probably tell by my accent, I'm actually Australian. I moved over to London a few years ago, and I've always sort of been involved with a few brands. I first actually started, I went to university and studied accounting and law, and I worked sort of in that industry for a couple of years and did some work in marketing and a few other different bits and pieces. And then I actually started a couple of brands before this. I was working with a clothing brand that I started before COVID. And then during COVID, I was buying and selling personal protective equipment. And as much as that sounds like it might have been a bit of a success, it was a bit of a failure, to be honest. Not understanding the market, not knowing a lot about it, import and export, and also just starting a brand. There's so many things that you learn, I think, when you're starting a brand or starting any sort of small business that you think you may know, and you go in thinking with maybe confidence, but there's a lot of things that you have to learn along the way. And that was a good way to sort of cut my teeth on learning what it takes to build a business, find a customer, source a product, as well as what I enjoy myself and what sort of products do sort of work. I'd always been involved in photography. I've never been a professional photographer myself, but I've always loved shooting film. I started shooting film through university, and then I'm actually from Brisbane in Australia. I moved down to Sydney in Australia after I graduated from university, and that's where I started shooting film a lot more. Sydney has got fantastic light, a lot of well-known buildings, a lot of architecture such as Sydney Opera House, Bondi Beach. The city of Sydney has amazing buildings, and yeah, it's summer a lot of the months, as well as going to Manly and a few other places that are over on the coast if you don't know Australia that well. But they're beautiful places, and I really fell in love with shooting film and the whole experience of not only how it's made, like I was really only shooting Kodak Gold. Given the light, it was very easy to shoot that sort of speed film, and just everything turned out so good. And you could even shoot it at parties, or you could shoot it with friends. And yeah, it was sort of before things kind of kicked off during COVID with the film renaissance, I guess you would call it. I was moving over to London to move here with my girlfriend, and we were traveling through Spain. I'd traveled through Spain a bit before, and then we went over to Portugal, and I saw a variety of different cameras, and I heard this word Candido. I tried a few other different words and naming a brand, but I originally wanted to start with designing a camera. This was the camera that you see today, the Candido camera, and how the process of the coloring of the leather, the actual use of the camera, where would you place Candido Collective on it, describing the features of the camera and all those sort of little things that go into it. How big do you want the logo? What font do you want to use? How's it going to be boxed? What's the unboxing experience? What other accessories are you going to add? And sort of looked at those aspects of a camera first before I looked at, well, that camera's great. It's great that it's reusable, but there's also film that needs to go in that camera. And that's where things sort of kicked off with film. And I started using film, and I just found that we were getting approached by so many different businesses around the world with designing it and having it small and in plastic canisters with stickers on it there were small batches of probably 10 to 100. And then we started doing larger batches, and we were getting approached by various different countries in Japan, in Thailand, Indonesia, Bali, Spain, Germany, France. All these different businesses were interested in what we were doing, and I didn't even think about film in a way at the start. I was really just focused on the camera and having that as a fun accessory. Next is sort of what inspired me to this Candido brand is I don't just draw it from other film brands. I actually really had a fascination with how brands are built and also what is behind that. I think that there's a variety of different film brands that are occurring now, and that can go with anything, whether that's film, clothing, shoes, bags. And these are a couple of the brands I don't know if you've heard of, but starting with like Axel Arigato, I've been aware of their shoes for the last year or so. They're very minimalistic. They're really based around not only having a shoe brand, but they want to build a community around it. They really work with the music community a lot. I know that we're trying to work with them more when we're shooting 800 film, and the music industry is big with people shooting film more at venues and during concerts as well. And there's also Triangle Swimwear. That's an Australian-based brand. It was an Australian-based brand by two Aussies living in Hong Kong. They started with this minimalist swimwear brand. Again, they were trying to just create something that was cost-effective and had really like a high-quality brand and feel to it, as well as Kante watches and also Beauty Pie. They're sort of two kind of luxury brands. Beauty Pie is a makeup business actually based here in the UK. It's a subscription model where you pay a fee per year and you get high quality makeup and different goods. It's obviously geared very much to the female market, but I've just seen this brand a lot. My girlfriend actually worked for them, and they have an amazing business where it's high quality goods at a good price. And that's how they separated themselves. And big boxes have turned up to a house where they have such great goods. They're well designed. Again, they're minimalistic, but they're also trying to create like a community of people that are paying a reasonable price where everything's getting more and more expensive. I think also Cinestill, like, even though they're probably the biggest competitor to ourselves in the film industry, is they're a market leader. Like, they do a fantastic job. When we were having plastic canisters, we were sort of still experimenting with the whole film production business. Then they were someone we looked up to, like, how do we get to sort of that point? What do they do? How do they do it? And understanding like their actual product and what they're trying to create. Also, just so when we go through this, these photos are from our films. So this was actually one I shot in Mexico about 2 months ago. And then the ones throughout it, except one photo, is actually all shot in our film. So you'll be pleased to enjoy some of those. The next one is sort of community. I think that drawing from those brands that I was just talking about is that community aspect. Is I'm not a genius by any means. My team isn't. I've worked with consultants on this brand, and like there's so much, and you'll see it later on, that we don't know, and we don't have the knowledge to learn that. There's been so much that I've had to learn from not only labs, from people like yourselves who have probably shot more film than me over a course of your life. And so we really need to engage with the community. It's a way that we've made decisions. It's the way that we've improved things. We've dealt with problems. And so that's really like what we try and base our brand off, is doing photography walks. We're actually visiting the new lab at Analogue Wonderland next week to put through a variety of negatives and actually see what it's like on different scanners and the settings and a few different things like that, as well as the boxing, like the colors of the box, the way the cameras are designed. And I've asked friends, family, people that have bought them about how to improve it, what errors have they had, how to use the camera or the film. And that sort of like that whole community feedback is something that we really want to try and make sure is, I guess, present in everything that we do. Making decisions is not easy, and the way that we test products, the way that we explore what we're going to do next, then that's very much like a consultation sort of. That's one of our parts of our ambassador program. A lot of our ambassadors do get products earlier than most people, and we ask like what has worked, what hasn't, and that's what we try to do and create that community. And it takes time, takes effort, but it's what we find that on Instagram, talking to people is really a big part of it. I was actually at Birmingham the other day, and I met a couple of you there, and there was a lot of talk about the film revival. And there are only a few manufacturers in the game. I think from a film manufacturing sort of business from ourselves there's a couple of things that people may not think about, and that's kind of been reflective on how we see it. And that's like film stores, lab popularity, and also the profitability from a business point of view. Like a lot of these businesses, they need to operate such like a lab where they need to have film coming into their store at all times of the year, and they need to be profitable. And that's it. Film businesses like Kodak need labs, and labs and stores need Kodak as well as other brands. So I think it's really interesting. We supplied about 75 stores last year, and we're growing even more. And it's really interesting to see those stores that are opening up labs, secondary stores. There's businesses like Carmencita, if I pronounce that right, in Lisboa. And then there's also another one, Film Never Die, in Australia. And they're even franchising some of their lab models, which is really, like, it gives a lot of confidence to a lot of people in that film's going to survive and it's going to grow. I know Harman's brought out their new color film, mixed reviews on that, but it's also something that's like a step in the right direction, that film businesses are making investments in not only infrastructure, but also the products. I think as well as film community, like, people want to be a part of a community. They want to be a part of something. They want to share their results. They want to be looking at different products. They want to be trying new cameras. And there's so many different activities now. There's walks, there's galleries and gallery nights. There's, as I said before, there's shooting of film at music festivals, and there's even groups where they're going out and shooting film and then having beers afterwards, which I think is a great thing that we'd like to incorporate in some of the walks that we do in the future. And I think as well, we work with a couple of major labs in Portland, Oregon, which is sort of on the southwest coast of America, if you haven't heard of it. And it's very close to Yosemite National Park. The light is amazing, and Nike is actually based out of there, if you've ever read Shoe Dog, the book. But they're actually starting to use film, just as one example of many brands, on actually photographing their goods, of taking photos and using film in their productions, and also using Super 8. Like, that sort of whole film, that authenticity is something I think a lot of people are moving back to, and trying to find that balance behind this whole movement of AI, but also balancing it with film. So I think that those sort of things are very encouraging for brands, but there's also some discouraging aspects, and that is the CEO of Kodak, who's recently come in, and if I know it's pretty rare that people would follow shareholder meetings or minutes of these shareholder meetings, but he is really moving towards an AI side of things, and there's more and more over the last sort of 4 or 5 meetings, less discussion around film and the renaissance of film. And they may be reducing some of their prices on some of their goods, but they're also looking at, ways that film and ways that Kodak is going to build. I think they're also scared of their Chapter 11 bankruptcy that occurred a number of years ago. And so that is something that's a little bit concerning, of like, what is the direction from someone like Humana shareholder board? We're from one of the major, or if not the major film producer in the world. And I think that, as well as chemicals for goods and labs, labs really struggle to find parts for Noritsu scanners and machines. They also struggle to even find Noritsus. So I think that those sort of things are very concerning to the film community, but it's something to be aware of. Even though everyone is seeing this massive renaissance, those sort of aspects will have flow-on effects throughout the market. There has been some questions about some larger format films. We have been looking at sort of a 120. That picture there on the top right, that was given to, we've had a few roles that we've been experimenting to give to, it's a 100 ISO black and white 120 film. And those sort of films are something we are looking at, trying to make sure that it's consistent with the backing paper, with also sometimes when you're spooling, you've got to be correct, otherwise it can scratch like any other type of film. But we are looking at that. It's also the 127 film or 220 film, like we've been looking at different sizes and also different lengths, and also black and white film. But those are heavily saturated markets, especially with Ilford being one of the major players. And as much as we'd love to give our community, and maybe we'll do some small batches, the way that we often operate is in batches of 10 to 30,000 rolls, just like many of the other film businesses around the world. And in order to produce that amount, it's very capital intensive. I think that's a real big barrier to entry for a lot of businesses wanting to enter into different films. And the commercial viability, like, we need to be able to sell it. It might be fantastic for people like yourselves who are using different formats of cameras and want to try it and are screaming out like, hey, we really want this. But at the end of the day, the decisions of what we make unfortunately are swayed by the commercial viability of some of these films. And they are super fun to shoot with, like the black and white. I've shot that as well. And some of those are just so fun to try. But to bring that out on a larger scale can be a little bit difficult. And it's something that we will as we grow. But being a smaller business, you need to kind of be careful with where you're allocating some of your capital. I think experimental films like Double Film, we've talked to them in Spain. They're a fantastic business. I think that they really play into that niche. So do some others in the US. And I know that Cinestill, they've just bought out a larger format, I think sheet film. And that's taken them years to sort of produce. And that was something that I think they did in their Kickstarter and said that this is an option for our Kickstarter. And that was many years ago. And now it's only just got to that point. I think that films, and I'll talk about a product next that we are looking at, and products is, yes, we want to focus on film. Cameras, that's something that we do enjoy. However, we do want to sort of try and lessen some of the plastic that we use in our business, and that's something else I'll talk about in a couple of slides. And I think brands have got to be careful on what and saying that they're completely sustainable, and we're not completely sustainable. It's not a main selling point of ours, but we want to try and watch a little bit more of what we do with those cameras. I think there's a lot of cameras out there, there's a lot of waste out there, and I don't know if that's going to be something that we're going to continue to grow. I think we'll be more focused on as a film community brand, and rather than maybe like a camera brand. I think they might be done in smaller runs, and they might be something to add alongside at camera walks or for fun, but we're really focused on film and trying to make that as high quality as possible and as consistent as possible. And nailing the films that we have, as well as one more that we're bringing out, is something that we're more focused on than maybe some of the larger, more experimental ones, which are already been taken over by a lot of brands. So this is a little bit of an insight for everyone here. We're actually we've been partnering with a brand to bring out our sort of own unique sort of film. It's a bit grainier. That's an example photo there, shot by one of our ambassadors. And so that's the box. I know that it might be a little bit hard to see, but it's called Las Palmas. So it's actually, that's the color of the box as well. We want to go something bright. We want to go something even brighter than what we have. It's still minimalistic. It's a little bit grainier than usual, but it's the first sort of film where we'll actually have our own Candido negative edge coating on it. And we're also working on the inside of the box, is where, yeah, you can follow us, but the secondary QR code that you can see there briefly is somewhere where you can scan, you can take some of those settings into your lab and say, look, this has been scanned through this scanner, or using these settings, push pulled, however we want to do it. And I'm going to sit down with Paul and the lab guys, I think it's Max, at Analogue Wonderland in the next couple of weeks. And we're going to work through a few roles and see what looks good, not only for this, but also for other films. We're going to add this to our other boxes. And I think that if you look at like what are the insights into the creative process of some of these is, well, I went back to sort of that Portugal that I talked about. Like that's where I draw a lot of inspiration from. I think the lights there fantastic. The language is awesome, even though I don't speak Spanish or Portuguese. Just the whole lifestyle as well around that, and also the other brands that I talked about. And what is the reasoning behind that? Like we have our 3 motion picture films. This one isn't motion picture. It hasn't got Ramjet removed on it. It's not Ramjet removed. And it's something that, yes, like we don't try and hide that we use Kodak. For a while there, we were like legally bound not to be able to say too much. But now, like, we don't necessarily have too many ties with that. And so, yeah, this is not associated with Kodak. And this is something that we really want to just show our community and something to try, a new product to bring out. And I think this will have a lot more of a vintage look, and it's a bit of a cooler colors. And there'll be more results released over the next couple of weeks. And that the timeline for that is probably 4 to 6 weeks to release something like this. So the reasoning behind that is to get away from just kind of using one brand and doing the same thing. It's to like have something else with a different look and feel. Again, product testing, we go through and shoot, many rolls of these to try and see the consistency. Cost and viability, yeah, we often go out and talk to the labs and the stores that we supply, as well as some of our community members, on what is it they're looking for, how do they like the look of this, would they shoot something new, and also like a bit of a marketing ploy, like trying to give something that's brand new with a new color. There's not a lot of those colors. We're going to come out with an orange box, but then that kind of conflicts with the Phoenix, and then it kind of conflicts with a few other different brands as well that are orange. We also did an orange box a little while ago. So yeah, trying to do something new, something that stands out in a lab, because we need to help labs sell our film as much as, and because that needs to be profitable for them, as well as, I think a lot of brands are turning around no matter what product you're in. You give some product to a store, you don't even help them along the way. And I think that's kind of, we want to engage with the community. We want to do photos at walks and a little bit of a soft launch with some of those labs. And that's kind of how we try and like launch products. And then we test this. We look at design modifications. We've just been going through and redesigning some of our boxes, but little tiny things like the product codings, like what sort of temperature should we be storing that at, giving some advice maybe on the box on what light that's meant to have, how big is the writing, where it's pictured. There was a spelling error in another language on like actually how that what around that film canister. So those sort of things we hadn't really looked at before. But again, that was from our community. That was from people who had messages on Instagram, who had tried it, messages from different countries. And yeah, it's something that we're looking at. Alongside these things is we're also looking at the cultures that we're a part of, like the Asian culture, very much with Japan, China, South Korea that we work with. And like the Japanese specifically are a big market and shooter of film, but the Japanese culture, they really love the look of boxes. If you've ever been to Japan, you've ever received Japanese goods, the boxes are always fantastically designed. And there's something that people keep. They're often high quality, and not necessarily this one, but back to my last slide is like future products is we will be looking to have something that really captures the Asian market, where they can look at this and be like, this is a really nicely designed box. And that's something that they will buy from stores. We really enjoy making high quality film, but we also want to give people the option to be like, oh, wow, this is a really interesting product. This is a really nice box. They can take the box, use the film, and keep the box on their mantle, because that's sort of their culture. And I think that's a very different culture from where I'm from in Australia, or even London, England. Like you do often use products and throw the box out. So I think that's something that we're aware of as a brand. Another thing as well, I kind of touched on it before, was sustainability. And I'm not going to say that we're a completely sustainable business, and film isn't fully sustainable in its own self, because there's a lot of chemicals that go into developing it, a lot of products that go into developing it, but also like when you're in the lab side of things, there's a lot of processes that go into disposing of those chemicals. And I think that's an ongoing process that labs and stores are trying to work on. But we've got some exciting stuff in the works with a company called Mull Club. That's their Instagram handle. If you look them up, they've actually worked with Take It Easy on their plastic canisters. So like the ones where you have your steel canisters that we produce, but they actually sit in a plastic canister within the box. And they're made of a compound or a plastic called HDPE, which is high density polyurethane. So that can be broken down. It's all black, unfortunately, but we've been approached by a variety of labs. They're like, what do we do with these? And we've actually been looking at producing goods like this on the left. And that could be anything from combs to coasters to candlestick holders, or card or soap holders as well. And it's something that we're trying to do. And we're trying to see, okay, well, what can we do with all this plastic? Because some of these labs, I don't know if you know, but some of them produce 80 to 180 rolls a day of film. Now, not everyone brings them in with inside the actual plastic canister, but it is something that we're trying to find a solution for, where they send it back to us and we produce a good for it that can be used in a variety of ways. How that works alongside our brand and what that looks like we're not in the comb use business. A comb sitting along a film business is a little bit of a random product, but I think something that maybe like a coaster, where you can use it, you can give it away, something that can be renewable, is something that we're really interested in and doing. I think that putting a little bit of my marketing hat on, I don't think we'd ever turn around and say, hey, like Candido, we're super environmentally friendly and sustainable. I don't think that we'd be pushing our brand to do that. But if we could try and offset some of the things we do in the best way possible, then I think it's a step in the right direction for a brand in any sort of market. The next one is collaborations with artists and photographers. Like as I said before, community engagement's massive. We're working with Analogue Amsterdam. They're doing a walk in the next couple of months. We're going to do one with Analogue Wonderland. We're doing one in Zurich this weekend. We did one in Shanghai, do one in LA. We want to do one in Australia. So those sort of walks, presentations like this, as well as sort of hopefully going to Italy later on next month or the month after and doing a presentation on what this brand is about, is something that I really want to do. And being sort of the face of the brand is work with photographers and do things like this. Like that's one of our photos on the 800 speed. They're going to have a night there, and they're also having a workshop. And it's just really interesting to see how film can be used in so many different areas. Like it could be fashion, It could be just a small group of people, like girls on film. I know we're working with a girl called Michelle in LA, and she's got a big community, and that's just females that shoot on film. And I think that's fantastic that we can partner with them to not only give them the opportunity to shoot film, maybe try a new film, but also just talk about, like, you know, it's shared community. They're going to have many interests they're going to talk about outside of shooting photos that day. So I think that's really good. I'm also planning on going over to the US and going and seeing a few labs and stores and hosting some walks probably later on in the year, around July, September. And then we're also, you would have seen yesterday if you were on our Instagram, there's a Studio 400. We're actually working with the Find Lab, which are located in Utah, through their Kickstarter. They're actually building a community center with a lab, with a gallery, and you can look into it. It's really interesting. I suggest you go on to theirs. It's just at the Find Lab. Or go into our Instagram. We'll be making a post later today. And it's really cool how we get to partner with them. And through the Kickstarter, you can buy some film, or you'll be given it as sort of a donation, and there'll be more information come out over the next couple of days. But they're going to be running that for about 4 weeks. And it's really building that community, and we'll have a place alongside them where it's entirely their project. They're doing all of the work, but we're helping them with something that they aren't necessarily experts in. And I think that's really fun to be able to work with people in that sort of industry. And also the gallery and creatives and creating that center. There's not a lot of those around, and I know they'll do a fantastic job. And I also talk about Analogue Wonderland and going to scan some of our films with them next week, so I won't bother harping on about that point. There was a question I think Amy mentioned, was just like what my favorite subject matter is for film photography. And this is a photo I just got into our Instagram the last couple of days. Isabella, our account manager, who's on that, she actually passed us over. And this is, like a photo of an amazing building. And I really like going around London, especially, and that's kind of started in Sydney when I lived there, was very much buildings and landscapes. I wouldn't say I'm an expert on portraits or anything like that, but I really enjoy these sort of buildings, especially around London. When the light is out, you don't get too many terrace houses or the sort of flats that you get here in comparison to many other cities. So I think it's really living in central London and taking those photos is really wonderful. Similar to like some of the photos here, the top left is the Barbican Centre that was taken by one of our community members as well. So it's just really interesting. And all 4 of those are from our film. And I think that what makes us different is, yes, we've transitioned from some of those smaller brands. And when we first began with, like, when you open a film, you've probably never pulled it completely out because you haven't wanted to expose it. But when we first started, we had plastic canisters. We were just taping it on there. Labs often struggled to even cut it off there because we didn't want this film to snap off, but you need a specialist machine to cut the film and specifically put it on the middle of the canister. Then you need to wrap the steel canister around that. A lot of people are reusing Kodak canisters or other films, and then just stickering it. We actually print them flat, and I'll show you some pictures next of what they look like. And I think that quality and improving that quality from steel to DX coated canisters, moving from 24 to 36 to try and give the most amount of value to people is what we're really looking at. We're trying to improve the consistency all the time and the production. Ramjet removal it can be complicated. It can take a few different machines and chemicals. And there's been some mishaps along the way where like we've had to overcome that as a brand. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But our individual films, like we try to keep them the price is as solid as possible. We started off having them at a very, very good price. Unfortunately, the cost of film, shipping, materials has all gone up like the rest of the world. And so we've really tried to keep it consistent. We do intend on keeping that consistent over the next 12 to 18 months. But unfortunately, some of those things we can't even prevent ourselves. I think the unique factors are my personal favorite, and same with my teams and a lot of our community, is the 400. The 400, it is daylight film. It has some elations, but not to the extent of maybe the 200 or the 800, which you would see. And the 400 is the bottom right photo in that slide. The top right is the 800 at night. That's an American shot. I don't think that's a service station. I think that's just a normal main street. And the bottom left is, as I was talking about, how we're trying to get a bit more into the music area, and people love shooting music festivals. And that's kind of a backstage photo. I think everyone's got their phones out there. And those sort of elations are really nice on the 400 and the 800. The 200 is a beautiful film as well. However, it is a struggle to avoid some of the yellowish color when we don't have enough sunlight. It's something we're working on. And that is something that I think is hard with that sort of speed. If you have it out in the sun, it's fantastic. It's a lovely tungsten-based film. However, when you start putting it under artificial light, it can have a little bit of a yellowish tinge. And that happens across a variety of brands. Even it can happen in other different brands that aren't based on motion picture. Just that speed can be a little bit difficult, that really need a lot of light. That would be the only downside. But I would say that the other ones, they give you a unique look. There's often they're a little bit different to Cinestill. And yeah, but we've been getting some amazing consistency these days, and like we only see improvements on that. And as we invest in our production facilities and also like the scale that we're doing now is something that, yeah, we're extremely like confident with. So I bet you've never seen a film production facility. So I'll talk you through a few of these. The left is actually a late 90s Fuji spooling and edge coating machine. So that, as you can see in the back and on the top, this production facility that we have is 2 stories high. It used to be an old office which was converted. So the far right, you can see that is where the canisters are made, and it's hard to see unless you zoom into it, but I'm sure you can look at this presentation another time. But on the left is where the boxes are put together. The steel is actually made and they're rounded, and then also down the back is a storage facility for a lot of the boxing. So the film isn't stored there because that's not quality controlled and it's not also temperature controlled. So the far left one is some machinery which where you cut the film, you can put the canisters which are seen in the third photo from your left, you put those into the far left machine. It's then spooled onto a plastic middle, and then they are actually topped and put together in that. Now that's a completely dark room normally. As you can see behind that, there's actually tape and also the windows. So we've taped those windows, and that second photos from your left, even though there's light on right now, those doors open, the door where with photos being taken from this perspective closes. Everything underneath the window and everything underneath the doors has like a black tape and kind of section which blocks all the light. So if you go in there, you cannot even see your hand in front of your face. It is that dark. And that's sort of where all the film is spooled, it's cut, and it's put into the canisters, which you can see in the blue bucket there. So I know many of you, that might be something quite interesting to you, and we do have some machines that do a fair bit of the work, but there's also and so there's some of the machines, and that's some of the photos of the facilities that we do have. And as you can see, they're super clean. They're, top of the range. And those machines have actually been taken out of Japan, and they've been bought, and there's probably some of the only machines are still around. No one's really making those machines anymore. And you're only really talking about the major brands that have some of those. So yeah, we're extremely happy that we've got this. And it's been a long journey from what we originally did. Some stories that highlight Candido's journey and values. Well, I think I've talked through a variety of that with our values, where I draw inspiration, where our team and our marketing team sort of draws inspiration, and where that gets us to for a minimalistic sort of boxing, as well as what we use and what different products we bring out. Community feedback is massive. Correcting errors. We've scratched film before. We've had light leaks. Every 10,000 or so, you get a couple of steel canisters that are broken or they don't fit. It's very, very rare, but we can't prevent that. There's no amount of stuff that we do we can't prevent, especially with that volume. Kodak has it, Cinestill has it, Ilford has it. It's something that we're always working on making as minimal as possible, but we just try and correct as many errors as we can if there ever are any goods like that. We're always trying to find ways to innovate, stay relevant. I think that we really long-term want to be a lifestyle film and community brand. We want to have relationships in a variety of different areas, whether that's music, whether that's labs, whether that's with sport on film, anything like that. That's something that we really are eager to explore. And building a community with more photo walks, having the ambassadors, working with different brands like the Find Lab are all things that we really are eager to work on. I think a little bit insider knowledge is there was an incident a little while ago where people have been finding motion picture film in back channels, and they've been putting it in those disposable cameras, and it's been very, very badly done. They've either cut the film, they've badly removed the remjet. There's a variety of things that people have done, and you'll see them all over a variety of stores, whether that's on Facebook, online, Alibaba, Shopify, different stores, Walmarts, those sort of major stores. And I think that's a real risk for Kodak, because those films are branded as Eastman on the edge coating, if you've ever looked at a negative. And I think Kodak is waking up to that. So it'll be very interesting to see how the motion picture world changes over the next 12 to 18 months or 2 years, or whether it doesn't change. But I know that there are a few things going on in the background with how Kodak's trying to cut down on some of the people using motion picture, and especially if it's outside of making a movie. So yeah, look, I think that Orwo and a few other businesses are looking to come back, as well as Harman, and diversify. But yeah, hopefully that is sort of gives you a bit of an overview of the film world. And yeah, it gives you a bit of an overview of Candido itself.
Thank you. That was really good. We did have a couple of questions, so I'm just going to ask them. When you were talking about sustainability and things like that, there was a question, does Candido have gelatin in manufacturing for vegan people to be aware of? I want to say yes, because I think no film has figured out a way to make it vegan yet.
I don't think anyone's figured out how to make it vegan. Yeah. But yeah, I don't specifically know what is in there or what's not that would be non-vegan, but yeah.
And then when you were talking about reusing your black canisters to make other things, someone said, could you make them into spools, for developing? Which I thought was quite a good idea.
Yeah, we definitely could. It's really just about making the molds, and especially if the black is very hard to work with, is what we're finding. It's hard to mix with other colors. The combs that people have used, those sort of things, they're often colored or they're mixed plastics. Black canisters are black. You get clear canisters as well, but the majority of it would be black.
Just a comment, really. Alice said, I wanted to say I was really impressed with how you handled the initial issues you had when you moved to the steel canisters.
Thank you. Thanks.
How confident can I be in terms of taking Candido film abroad, in terms of issues with airports scanning? And are there any tips you've got? Is it best to stick with the 200 speed for that, or are there any insights you've got?
Where are you going to shoot the film? What's the sort of conditions?
So it would generally be, European destinations, but I tend to prefer a 400 or 800 speed film generally. But I'm just wondering, particularly with the 800, whether maybe I should skip that if it's got to go through, airport security.
We've been trying a few different things because there's some differing views. One is to get them hand checked. That can be difficult depending on the European country that you're in, to explain that even on the way back. The other option is we've also tried, because your checked-in luggage does go through scanners, and we haven't done it. Well, it's hard to know how many scanners that would go through compared to putting it in, say, a bag that goes through your hand luggage. But trying to wrap it up in your actual checked-in luggage, trying to put it under a number of layers. I know X-rays go through anything, but trying to do that, we've found that it can be fine. We haven't really had any issues. Even we export a lot. I know Ilford, we've had conversations with them, they've actually been putting in X-ray scanners to see, okay, well, if we ship with UPS and we send it to America, how much is it getting scanned? And then if we ship with FedEx or we ship with DHL, who scans it the most? They've actually put in things with their large batches to see how much has this been scanned. I think the best advice would be if you are confident in having the conversation with customs officials or airport officials to have it hand scanned, take any of the films. I think that the 200 and 400, if you're going to a European summer, I think they're the best ones to take. The 800's great. But I would even experiment maybe taking some in your bag and then even putting some in your actual checked in luggage right in the middle, wrapped up, and seeing if that causes any issues. Because we haven't had any issues yet at all.
Thank you.
If it helps, Ben, I flew to Ireland a couple of weeks ago. I took some film through at 800 plus, and the agent informed me very reliably, it turned out, at Birmingham Airport, that the new scanners will not affect film even up to 3200, and they allowed it through, and I've not noticed any issues with my film on the return. Obviously, that's going to depend on airport and routes. I think it really only affects film that's 800 or more, if that's my understanding.
That'd be my understanding as well. Yeah, I think some people have put up different videos wondering if their Kodak Gold, for example, has been affected. But yeah, it seems like it holds out pretty well.
Sorry to jump in. I was just going to say I've had quite a bit of success asking for hand checks at airports. I'd bring the film I'm traveling with in a little transparent bag, a bit like you would your toiletries, and just approach a member of staff and ask if it could be hand checked. And then at some stations they've said the scanners are fine, and they can point to a sticker on the machines often that says film safe.
Yeah.
And I've had no problems at all with them going through when they've been film safe scanners.
Yeah.
But hand checking, if you ask, people are usually very, very kind. And these days people are more familiar with people traveling with film. A few years ago, they would look at me like quizzically and what is this stuff? But now it seems it's more common.
I always thought the USA TSA, given their reputation, would be the worst to deal with, but actually they were the friendliest and loveliest whenever I've gone to the US. So, yeah.
I didn't know they had stickers now that said film safe. That's pretty on this actual scanner.
Yeah, I've seen one in there. It was in, I think it was coming back from Greece. It had a film safe on the scanner, and that was across a language barrier as well. It had it in a few different languages, and then a picture of a film canister.
I don't know if anyone else had any questions necessarily.
I think there was one that just popped up from Izzy in the comments.
I'm just curious because I've got a music festival coming up, and I'm intrigued.
I think just one or two. Yeah, I think they pushed it too. But I can have a look because
it'd be nice to see some examples actually, if you've got any.
we're getting more and more people try pushing it and pulling it, especially the 800 at some music festivals. Yeah, people have really been trying to push it a bit more, and yeah, it's been working out really well. I think we've put up a couple of posts where we've said this, but it's been working well. I'll try and find some, and I'll ask AIM, or I don't know if I have your email, Heather, or Instagram, but if you message us on Instagram, then I'll be sure to get someone to reply.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Have any other questions?
I was going to say, did you want to say anything about the photo walk that we've got coming up as well? Because we haven't really spoken about that yet.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be more sort of information coming out. Well, I don't know, we haven't talked about numbers, but usually 40 or 50, we'll try and have some people come along, and yeah, I should be there as well. I might even try and get some of my team to come as well, and yeah, I'm excited to do it with you guys, and I'm sure we'll talk through the logistics, Karen and Amy, but usually we cap it at about 40 or 50. We should have some stickers done by then as well. And yeah, a variety of different films, weather depending on the weather, but it should be sort of a 400 sort of film time. Yeah.
I was going to say it'd be really interesting to see how that workshop, the night workshop that you mentioned earlier in one of your slides, it'd be great to see how that goes as well.
I think that there'll be a lot of content come out of that. That's being hosted in Milan. So yeah, that'll be coming out, and we'll be sure to release all of that content.
Just to note that the date of the photo walk is the 25th of May, which is a Saturday. But yeah, we'll release further details on that soon.
Yeah, so I don't know, Amy, do you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, so thank you so much everyone for joining us. We will be putting this on YouTube, as mentioned, in a couple of weeks, so you can watch back the conversation. And if you have any questions for Harry, you're welcome to kind of send them through us if that's an easier form of communication, and we'll pass them on to Harry and Candido.
Hopefully you guys got a bit out of that, because I know that sometimes brands are a little bit hard to know what's going on behind the scenes, and for anyone that's got a brand or started a brand or even thought about venturing into film or photography or anything like that, I think sometimes there's a lot of questions that are unanswered and hard to find a bit of the point in the right direction online or even from the community. So hopefully I pull back the curtain a little bit and yeah, it gave you some insights.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, thank you for coming, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Great. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.